Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, y'all are having a wonderful day today. So, of course, as I promised, I stated that I was going to give my little fight analyzations and that I was going to give my little fight predictions of the big fight card that will be happening this weekend. And of course, I believe that the main fight that will be headlining is that of David Benavidez versus that of an Anthony Yard, which should be a very entertaining fight. I think that it'll be an entertaining fight. I think that it has a possibility of being a stoppage on either end, but I do believe that more than likely David Benavidez will win the fight. I'm going to assume that more than likely he either gets a ladder round stoppage or that he's probably going to end up going to that of decision. I'm going to maybe just slightly, maybe just tentatively, although this is not going to be my official prediction for the David Benavidez versus Anthony Yard fight, because first I'm going to give my Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr. fight review, or prediction, excuse me, and then I'll have a little bit more time to analyze a little bit more in depth the weaknesses and the strengths of both David Benavidez and Anthony Yard and how they could possibly counter each other or what strengths and weaknesses they'll bring into the fight that the other can possibly take advantage of. But I'm doing this video right now because I just got done analyzing to probably the best of my ability, but that of Devin Haney versus Brian Norman Jr. And this is an extremely tough fight to predict because Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr., when you take a look at them, there are certain things that I think that both fighters can counter the other in because they may be a little bit weak in that area. Excuse me. And for any of you that may consider yourself as a quote unquote strategist or, as a quote unquote tactician or, likes to break down certain strategies or, overall loves certain things like that, which is pretty much what boxing and fighting and really a lot of sports are really all about, at least if you like that type of the part of the game. This is a very exciting fight. It's not necessarily going to be an exciting fight to the quote unquote casual fan, probably, because I don't think that this fight is going to possibly be super fan friendly, but this is a fight that is potentially going to be very entertaining for any of us that do appreciate that of the sweet science, or at least appreciate certain style matchups. Because when I say the sweet science, I don't really see, either of these guys being, at least at the moment, top 10 level pound for pound fighters. Now, Devin Haney, of course, at one point in time was a top 10 level pound for pound fighter. But then, of course, pretty much ever since that one performance over Ryan Garcia, which was an official loss before it was overturned, of course, because Ryan Garcia, I believe, was called an Osterine or Osterine, whatever it was pronounced as, the steroid, excuse me, or the performance enhancing drug. But the point is pretty much ever since then, Devin Haney, of course, has not been looked at as the same. He's not top 10 pound for pound on many pound for pound lists after that. He still does remain, but in the bottom half after that. So even though that win was recalled, it was very obvious that there were certain holes that were exposed in Devin Haney's game that he's always had. And this is going to be a very particularly interesting fight because Brian Norman Jr. is about as big as Devin Haney. Devin Haney, to be quite honest with you, one could debate is a natural welterweight fighter. He's a guy that has fought at 140, I believe, a couple of fights, and of course he was a champion there, but he rehydrates at around 165 pounds. I mean, he legit was rehydrating heavier than certain guys that I've seen in that weight division in the past that I would consider legit welterweights. He rehydrated even heavier than what Terrence Bud Crawford did, I believe, at that official weight. And I've stated as of recent because of how well Terrence Bud Crawford was able to handle that 168-pound fight. And of course, how lengthy and tall he is. Terrence Bud Crawford, maybe you could even debate, could fit quite well at 154 at his absolute best. But Devin Haney is someone that he's even bigger than guys that I've seen like Miguel Cotto and Marcos Maidana and Sugar Shane Mosley. He's even bigger overall than certain guys like that. So the point is that this is going to be a very particularly interesting fight because Devin Haney is going to be fighting someone that really is his own same size and someone that I would not claim is a quote unquote 10 out of 10 fighter, but someone that does have a lot of potential if you fight the wrong fight. Excuse me. Or overall if he fights that of the potential right opponent or, something like that. But this is going to be a very particularly interesting fight because once again, for any of us who are strategists, for any of us who are tacticians, there's a multitude of ways that certain people can win, and then there are certain types of ways that a fighter can win, and certain people overall may not understand what I'm saying by that. When I say overall that there's a multitude of ways that somebody can win, there are a multitude of ways, or there is more than one way to skin a cat. But there may be certain ways that a certain type of person wins. When I'm talking about that, I'm not talking about necessarily, the complete skill set. I'm talking about what strategy do they necessarily bring to the table. Sometimes someone wins a fight because they're just that much more skilled of a fighter. Sometimes someone wins a fight because they may, be a little bit more skilled than that fighter. Excuse me. Or sometimes a fighter ends up winning because they just have the perfect type of style matchup in order to beat that type of fighter, or they're just kind of a trap fight for that fighter. And Brian Norman Jr., in my view, when I take a look at him, at least at a lot of his game, especially within that of the mid-range and the up close and personal range, I think that he's more skilled than Devin Haney within those ranges. However, when I did take a look at his fight, I believe his name was Quentin Randall or whatever his name was, a very tall and lengthy, kind of defensive fighter. He had a lot of problems in that fight. And I believe that it was a very low rate fight. I believe that both fighters in that fight only landed around 50 something punches. So the question is that, will he be able to play right into Devin Haney's game? Even though, of course, I do believe that he's a very big threat towards Devin Haney, especially because, he might be able to do certain things with Devin Haney that Devin Haney has not quite experienced before because of the size. But that being stated, Devin Haney could very, possibly win this fight because of the type of strategy that he is going to employ. But that being stated, I'll explain what I mean by that as it goes along. I think that this is a very, very hard one for me to predict. This is easily the hardest fight, in my personal view, for me to predict, because this is all going to depend, how sharp both fighters are. And on top of that, who's able to take advantage of what, and also who is able to create their offense. That's really what this fight is going to be predicated off of. Whoever wins this fight is going to be because they were able to be sharper and create their offense a little bit more. And sometimes a fighter ends up winning because they're a little bit more defensively sound or a little bit more on the back foot. If Devin Haney ends up winning this fight, it's because not only was he a little bit sharper than his last performance, but it's also because Brian Norman was not able to get past that of the quick feet and more than likely that of the lateral movement, and he's just uncomfortable with that type of style. If Brian Norman ends up winning this, it could be maybe for a couple of reasons. It could be because maybe he's pushing Devin Haney up against the ropes a little bit more, overall than what he used to, maybe against that of a Quentin Randall. It could also be that maybe he hits Devin Haney in the perfect moment and has perfect timing, just like what Ryan Garcia did against him. But this is an extremely tough fight for me to predict because, once again, it is going to completely depend who lands what, and also, once again, who is sharp, and also who is able to handle the strategy better than the other. And I think that Brian Norman, once again, is very skilled in certain ranges. But those ranges may not matter if you decide not to create your own offense, and if your opponent has a range that can possibly nullify those other ranges, because he's not going to get into the mid-range or that of the up-and-close and personal range. He's going to make you try to play his game. And if Brian Norman Jr. does not use his feet to the best of his ability and also keep his hands up consistently and also does not take advantage of creating his own offense, which at times he can be a little bit too reactionary, he could very well lose this fight just because he's being a little bit too patient or waiting for Devin Haney to come in. So we'll see what ends up happening. But that being said, let's get into this. I wanted to see the sit down. It should be very interesting. And then I'll probably give my very tentative fight prediction at the end, because this is this is the fight to where really, making a fight prediction, I would only really, kind of make it overall. It's one of those fights to where, you wouldn't want a gun pointed to your head. I'll just personally state it like that. But anyways, that being stated, let's get into it. Let's see what these gentlemen have to say.
You ain't gonna stop with nothing. I'm gonna step over you, bud.
On November 22nd, live on DAZN Worldwide, the welterweight title will be on the line when Devin the Dream Haney takes on Brian Norman. For Haney, it's a chance to get back on top in the third weight class. Brian Norman, it's an opportunity to show that he belongs.
He's really a bum. I never even heard of this name until 2 years ago. Once again, the name don't matter.
Let me also address this very quickly, because I believe that, I was having a conversation overall with one of my, commenters. I believe that the name was quote unquote Tiffany Cook, and I'm not quite sure if it's a, a female or a male, commenting. But that being stated, of course one would assume female, but it's also very possible male. Anyways, that being stated, You know, when I did my MMA video the other day and I stated about John Jones that I think a big part of the reason also why he was as successful as what he was, or it's at least a factor, was because he had majorly outsized a lot of the guys at the light heavyweight division. Not also just because he took steroids. Now, don't get it twisted. John Jones, in my view, is someone that is astronomically skilled. He's debatably the most skilled MMA fighter of all time, and he's someone that, in my view, you could debate as the greatest of all time. That being stated, do I think that, the factor that, excuse me, do I think that the factor that he did, majorly outsize a lot of opponents in the early days, overall in the beginning of his career, do I think that that was a partial factor? Absolutely. When you take a look at a lot of the fighters that he ended up facing, Rampage Jackson, Rashad Evans, Lyoto Machida, Vitor Belfort, John Jones is 6'4" with about an 84.5-inch reach. When you take a look at guys like Vitor Belfort and Rashad Evans and Rampage Jackson and Shogun Rua, those guys would be anywhere from 6'1" and at the most would have about a 75-inch arm reach. So the point is that John Jones, although he was fighting all-time great level fighters, and at the time, overall they would have been light heavyweight fighters, John Jones was the beginning of the new era of light heavyweight fighters. Like, there's always a bunch of people overall that claim that Rocky Marciano, that, part of the reason why he's not ranked as highly is because he was really fighting guys that were light heavyweights and all that stuff. But the thing is about Rocky Marciano is that narrative is actually a little bit overrated, at least for him. And the reason why I claim that is because Rocky Marciano, even back then, to be quite honest with you, if they didn't have weigh-ins, the day of, he probably could have even fought at light heavyweight. Because Rocky Marciano pretty much at a max was only at 185 pounds. When he was fighting guys like Joe Louis was at a legit like 210, 220. And then on top of that, he had like a 8-inch reach advantage over Rocky, and he was a lot bigger. That's what a lot of people don't understand. When Rocky was actually fighting guys like Ezra Charles and, who was once upon a time light heavyweight as well, but especially Jersey Joe Walcott and Joe Louis and some of these other guys, those guys were actually decently bigger than Rocky Marciano. When you take a look at John Jones, for example, John Jones was a lot bigger than a lot of his opponents. He was way lengthier, than a lot of the opponents that he fought. He also was someone that obviously was just bigger. It is what it is. Now, of course, what the man, tried to retort with was that overall, well, wrestling and legs are also involved, so, it really doesn't count as much. No, actually it does. Because anyone that knows anything about MMA knows that legs are also a part of the game in MMA, and you can also use that as a length finder, as a range finder, not just your arms. And then on top of that, the longer your legs can be, the more of an advantage you can have on the ground, especially with jiu-jitsu and wrestling. And on top of that, the harder it can be to get to the ground. So the point is that it absolutely can be a factor. Now, excuse me, do I use that to just completely discredit John Jones and say that he's not in the debate? No, I don't. But that being stated, it does need to be noted that John Jones physically, both with steroids and also his size, he had certain advantages overall over his opponents that Anderson Silva and George St. Pierre did not. And certain people overall can like that, they cannot like that, but that is just the truth of the matter. There's not many fighters that Anderson Silva fought at his absolute peak where he had an 8 to almost a damn near 13-inch reach advantage over those guys. It didn't happen. So, I mean, it is what it is. People can like that, they can not like that, but that is a part of the game. Why do I mention this all right now? Because Devin Haney is someone that, in my view, is a little bit similar. He's someone overall that at 135, in my view, was a little bit of a weight bully. I'm not claiming overall that he did not deserve credit over those fighters, but when he started to face certain guys that were a little bit bigger in size, like that of a Ryan Garcia, you could tell why he was having a little bit of problems. Because he was not used to people reaching within his range, and he's not as defensively sound as what a certain amount of people overall would have you believe. Devin Haney is not a quote-unquote defensive master with upper body movement, nor is he a defensive master with keeping his hands up, which is why he got caught with the left hook so many times in that Ryan Garcia fight. Where Devin Haney is defensive is his all-around foot movement and his lateral movement. That is the mastery of a Devin Haney. That's overall where his defensive prowess is. And if Brian Norman Jr. is not able to take advantage and create his own offense, he could very easily possibly lose this fight. So he needs to be very careful. But also keep in mind, because I want to, mention this, because I know certain people will say, oh, you're only saying that with certain black fighters. You only degrade black fighters. Keep in mind, I've also said this about guys like Max Holloway, Oscar De La Hoya, Sebastian Fondura, and there's been other ones as well. But, it is what it is. But anyways.
Today, when they face off. Devin, I'll start with you. There was a few opponents tossed around for you over the last few months. First, it was Ryan Garcia, then it was Teofimo Lopez, and now here we are with you set to face Brian Norman. Why was this?
You know, I've also had recent comments asking me about the Virgil Ortiz versus, what's his name, Jerome Butena situation. I can't really comment on that because I have not done enough research, and I do not comment on something that I, overall basically do not know enough about. But that being stated, overall, what I will state is that it appears, of course, on the surface that Virgil Ortiz is not as excited to face Jerome Butena, I would admit, of course, but at the same time, both Virgil Ortiz and Jerome Butena have kind of, stated overall or turned down contracts in the past. So although on the surface or in front of the camera, Jerome Butena seems very excited, it was him who turned down the deal last time. Now, to be fair, that was when Jerome Butena stated that he wanted to unify 147, but then literally just a few months later, he decided to only get one more belt at that weight class and then move up to 154. So, I mean, of course, there's going to be a certain amount of people claiming that Virgil is quote-unquote ducking that of a Jerome Butena, but at the end of the day, they did send him an offer and he declined. Now, as of right now, it does appear that Virgil Ortiz overall is not as excited to fight him, but I needed to do more research on that because I'm not going to claim something when it's not something that I don't know about. But that being stated, overall, one thing that I do know about is that Teofimo Lopez absolutely did avoid Devin Haney. And Teofimo Lopez, I think, is a phenomenal fighter. He's someone that is very highly skilled. He does have certain faults, but, that being stated, and Teofimo has gotten in there with some good names, but he's basically done everything possible to not fight that of a Devin Haney. There was rumors about them possibly fighting each other, and Teofimo Lopez always made the fight very hard to possibly make. So that was up to him. One thing I'll give Devin Haney this, and I think that Devin Haney, I don't think that he's someone that is top 5 pound-for-pound skilled or anything like that, but he is someone that has basically gotten in the ring with almost every name that a lot of people have called for. He is willing to get in the ring with Vasily Lomachenko, even when Lomachenko was the somewhat unified champion, and Lomachenko turned the fight down in the beginning part of that reign. He was willing to fight Gervonta Tank Davis, and Gervonta basically avoided him like the plague. The only fighter that Devin Haney, to be quite honest with you, has really not been able to get in the ring with has been Shakur Stevenson, or at least he made that fight very difficult to make. It was obvious that he knew that he was a huge threat. But other than that, I give Devin Haney a lot of credit because he's been willing to get in the ring with almost everybody. Gervonta Tank Davis, Vasily Lomachenko, or Vasily Lomachenko, however you want to call him, Ryan Garcia, Teofimo Lopez. So I give Devin Haney a lot of credit. You have to give the man that.
The right fight for you.
No, I mean, he's the best guy right now at 147. He was the best guy that was willing to step up and fight me. So here we are.
Brian, you're coming off a sensational knockout win over Jin Sasaki. Maybe the knockout of the year at the end of it.
Knockout of the decade.
Knockout of the decade. We'll go with that too.
Gotta love Brian Norman Jr.'s confidence. But we'll see. Sometimes there's confidence and sometimes there's arrogance. What I'll say about that personal performance is that I thought that was the best performance of his career, that win over, I believe, that Japanese kid Sasaki. But Sasaki also was running right into his shots and squaring up and overextending a lot of punches, which was kind of making that fight very easy for Brian Norman. One thing I did notice is that he used his feet to a much better degree than what he did in that one fight, I believe, against that one Latino fighter, Quintero, or whatever his name was, Quintrio, whatever his name was, I don't remember. The dude who was like 30-something, or something like that. And Brian Norman Jr., although he clearly was winning that fight, he was getting hit way, way, way too much in that fight. And he needs to be very, very careful within this fight. But he looked very good in that fight. But the real question is about Mr. Brian Norman Jr. is how is he going to handle someone like that of a Devin Haney, someone that has a very hit and, kind of run type of style. And when I say run, I'm not talking about run as in, overall not skilled. I just mean overall kind of like guerrilla type warfare tactics. Hit overall and then completely move out of the way. We'll see how Brian Norman Jr. handles that.
You're doing a title defense here. Why was this the right fight for you?
It's just who I am as a person. I love fighting the best, and like everybody say, he has the perfect style to beat me. I don't have feet. I don't have defense necessarily speaking.
I think that your defense is decent, but it's not, in my personal view, anything that is quote unquote, exceptional. And Devin Haney is someone overall that, he, in terms of foot, he's not someone that I would say is a Floyd Mayweather, but he's someone overall that is quick enough of foot and he has good enough of feet. And one thing I did notice about Brian Norman is that he does not have exceptional feet. He was very flat-footed in that one fight against that one Latino fighter that he was fighting, and he was very slow of foot. So one thing at least I'll give Brian Norman Jr. this is that at least he's a little bit self-aware. But like I said, sometimes there's confidence and sometimes there's arrogance. Are you going to work on your feet within this fight, or are you basically claiming that I don't need feet in order to beat that of a Devin Haney? And that's one thing that I'm just not quite sure. It's a little bit hard to tell who's going to win this fight because Brian Norman Jr. just really hasn't faced anyone that is that severely talented. And then on top of that, personality-wise, I don't know if he's going to take the approach of improvement in this fight or if he's going to take the approach of I can beat Devin Haney overall even if he's going to establish his game. We'll see. I expect that both fighters will probably, try to do their best, but we'll see.
As they say, so here's the.
I mean, that's not what I meant. Of course, both fighters are going to try to do their best. What I mean is that I do believe that both fighters are going to try to bring it their all and make certain adjustments.
Blueprint to beat me, so now I got to show y'all that I can do everything.
Do you think you have the blueprint
Good on him.
to beat him?
Of course, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't have took the fight if I didn't think so. He's shown against lower opposition that he's the best. This is a whole different level, and I will show him that.
I agree with that. And a lot of people, of course, may not like that, but that is the truth of the matter. The truth is that we don't know how Brian Norman Jr. is going to perform against someone like that of a Devin Haney, because Devin Haney is going to be the most skilled and the most tricky fighter and the most experienced fighter that he has ever fought. So this is going to be a very, very, very hard fight to kind of predict, but we'll see.
These guys that he's fought, I don't know them. I genuinely don't know none of the guys. I guess Jinsaki, or I guess that's the last guy. But before that, I didn't know who he was. So it's just, I'm going to show him that it's levels.
And how I feel about that is, so you are saying you are somebody, right?
No,
So-
I'm somebody.
So
wouldn't
you
be
are
fighting me
somebody,
if I wasn't somebody.
Somebody, brother.
Okay.
I give you your credit.
Okay.
Boy, you the best of the best. Boy, you out here doing your little
Yes, sir.
thug with
Yes,
it.
sir.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
So I
sir.
done knock
Yes,
your
sir.
block off.
Thank you very
Can't
much.
nobody else say nothing else. That's all. That's how I feel about that.
He suggested a couple of times that your level of opposition hasn't been very good. So suggesting that that's kind of why you're in this position right now. What do you think about that?
I mean, I don't think it's easy to be a champion at all. I
No,
don't
Tyron
care.
got the best matchmakers in the world. We both know that. Do we know?
Well, the thing is that Brian Norman Jr. was, a lot of the champions at 147 right now, they're kind of whack juice. It just is what it is. I mean, Rolly Romero became a recent two-weight division champion off of beating Ryan Garcia, a guy who had never even fought at the weight class before. So, I mean, we all know that, some of the champions there are not, super, super legit. But at the end of the day, Brian Norman Jr., I do believe now that Jerron Boots and Virgil Ortiz, now that they both left the division, I do believe that he is the clear best there, at least according to my recollection. That being stated, we'll see how he does against Devin Haney.
Then you come up through
Do you
top
know
rank.
that? Top rank? No, top rank, no.
I don't know who you
top
came
rank
up with.
when
I ain't gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
But no matter who I fought in the past, anything like that, I'm here to prove that, okay, y'all say I haven't fought anybody in the past, anything of that nature. But look at this. The great Devin Haney, the Dream, and Debo Haney, and things of that nature. Boy, you bad, you feel me? So, after I beat this one, what can y'all say then? Who y'all gonna throw at me next? Because I'm finna walk through this one.
You don't believe that.
I don't believe that. Well, I'm gonna show you that.
You don't believe
I'm
that.
gonna show you that.
You don't believe that.
You've probably watched some of his fights, or at least highlights of his fights.
I think that Brian Norman Jr. does personally believe that, and I'm not quite sure if Devin Haney believes that he's truly lying or not, but I think that Devin Haney believes that he's telling the truth. Because Devin Haney right now is coming across as someone that's trying to get under his skin, but taking a look at later parts of this interview, I think that this guy did a little bit of a better job trying to get under Devin Haney's skin than that of vice versa, which could be a contributing factor in the fight. We'll end up seeing. But that being stated, the question will be is that, what will happen overall once Brian Norman Jr., when he deals with Devin Haney, who's starting to move back and starting to peck at him, and overall, let's see once again how he cuts off the ring. Because he's not someone that I've seen against Quentin Randall. He's not someone that cuts off the ring extraordinarily well. Now, he might do it just well enough against Devin Haney, and the fact that this is Haney's first fight at welterweight, it just might be enough for him to win the fight.
You see how he fights. What do you think of the style?
I think that he can punch. I do think that. I'm not blind, I'm not oblivious to it. I think that he can punch. But that's it. I haven't seen nothing else.
you've faced some power punchers. Ryan Garcia, certainly. Vasily Lomachenko, 135, could crack. Do you think you've ever faced someone with this kind of power?
I think everybody at the top got power.
The only other guy that I can really probably say has this level of power would probably be that of a Ryan Garcia. And the reason why I claim that is not because I think Brian Norman Jr. is just this A-plus level puncher, but he is someone that is at the welterweight division, and this is Devin Haney's first fight there. So it might be a different level of size and power that Devin Haney is used to, and sometimes when a fighter ends up moving up a weight division and they feel that, it tires them out a little bit more, and on top of that, the power is a little bit different, so they end up throwing less. And if Devin Haney, ends up feeling that and putting on a performance kind of similar to last time, not landing that many punches, and if Brian Norman Jr. is able to get to him enough, it might be enough for Brian Norman Jr. to win the fight. But the thing is about Brian Norman, the thing that he's going to have to do is you have to start by creating your own offense. You have to show Devin Haney that you're not going to be deterred by this hit and run type of style. This hit and move, laterally. You have to show that you're going to be able to handle that. And that also you're not going to allow Devin Haney to tie you up without possible consequences. And also that you're not going to allow him to use certain angles with his lateral movement to just easily catch you. You have to use your feet to somewhat move in and out. And you are going to have to pressure Devin Haney effectively in this fight to win.
I think you go in there and you let anybody hit you. My little brother, I stand right there and I just let him hit me. It's gonna hurt too. So of course he got power, but he's got power against guys we've never seen. I do think that he can punch. Don't get me wrong. I do think that he has power, but he's showing it against guys we've never seen before. I don't know these guys that he fought.
Jack, you don't know him don't mean nothing, Jack.
No, I've been boxing for how long? I've been at this top level.
Just because you don't know
the
these
people don't know these people. The world don't know these niggas.
I don't give a damn what these folks know or don't know. I know what
This guy's accent is hilarious. I don't give a damn what the
carry these motherfuckers.
No, I do believe that. I do believe that you got power.
I might touch your arm and your ankle go break.
Yeah, okay. Sound good. It sound good.
I'm finna turn your meniscus.
It sound good.
You ever had your torn meniscus, brother?
And it ain't gonna happen. It ain't gonna never happen. You ain't gonna do it.
Walk out with an ankle break.
Let me state this very quickly. Because the narrative about Devin Haney for a lot of people, or at least a lot of his quote-unquote haters or his critiques, a lot of people have claimed that Devin Haney does not have a chin. That is not something that I have ever personally agreed with. Someone with a bad chin to me is someone overall that gets rocked not only consistently, overall, even if they are somewhat good defensively or all around skilled, but on top of that, they cannot recover once they are hurt. So those are certain fighters, overall like Amir Khan. AJ Anthony Joshua, well, I think AJ's chin is actually a little bit better than overall what people give him credit for, but he's someone that probably has a B grade level chin, somewhere around there. When you talk about, that of a Yuriorkis Gambo, he was very chinny, right? When you talk about, some other fighters, like I'm trying to think, some other fighters that might be a little bit chinny. Excuse me. Who are some other fighters that I would consider to be chinny? There might be some other ones that, I'm not personally thinking of. Vladimir Klitschko was someone that definitely also did not have a good chin. Now that could have been maybe because maybe he wasn't in as good a shape in the beginning part of his career. But pretty much everyone who watched Vladimir Klitschko, especially in the early part of his career, he was known for not having the best chin.
You ain't gonna do it.
Bring it back, Brace.
I seen Devin Haney hurt not only against Jorge Linares, but Vasily Lomachenko and Ryan Garcia, and he was never close to being knocked out in any of those fights, even in the Ryan Garcia fight. And Ryan Garcia, I believe, is an astronomical puncher, and Devin Haney was able to get up each and every single time. So I give him a lot of credit for that.
Do it.
Bring the strip.
You do it to the
We gonna need it, man. Gonna slide that thing up in after the first round.
Knock it off.
It's all right,
Knock
brother.
it off.
It ain't gonna be too. He ain't gonna be.
He's really a bum.
Make it real short
I really didn't want to say nothing,
real
but
short,
he's really a bum.
You know
I never
what
even
I'm
heard of this nigga until 2 years ago.
Once again,
he
the
just came out of
name
nowhere.
don't
He's nobody.
matter.
He's nobody.
The name don't matter. I'm finna make a name after this one. ATL stand up,
good.
baby.
Sound good.
ATL.
I had a feeling overall that this man was from Atlanta. This man was either from Atlanta or New Orleans because that accent overall is just straight up Southern hospitality. Anyway.
Stand up.
ATL stand up, all right.
Each and every last one of y'all, even the fans and everybody. I'm glad y'all doing that because y'all underestimating everything else. So you can keep talking about the power, but that's just what just put it all together. It's skills behind everything I do. It's a whole IQ behind everything I do.
You said
You're a smart fighter, Mr. Brian Norman. I don't think that you're someone that I would claim as quote unquote top 10 pound for pound. And I don't think you winning this fight would also either put you in the top 10 pound for pound, but it would probably put you within the top 20 to top 30. Because Devin Haney is not, possibly not quite the same fighter that he once was. He definitely looked a little bit rusty and a little bit timid in the Jose Ramirez fight because of that Ryan Garcia performance that he put on. So we'll see once again where Devin Haney is at. I need to see where he's at mentally and if he overall fights a little bit more courageous within this fight. And when I say courageous, I'm not talking about less moving around. I'm talking about overall him throwing more and him willing to exchange more, which could put him into trouble. It could put him, in order to win the fight. But we'll see.
You said a moment ago that he's a bum.
Yeah.
You think that?
Yeah, I do.
So you think champions are bums?
Who?
So you think champions are bums? You think anybody can be a champion?
What champion, though? Yeah, no, I think anybody can be a champion.
You think anybody?
Well, not anybody can be a champion, but there are certain champions that probably should have never been champions. I'll put it that way. Like, there are certain champions that you take a look at, and it's like they were kind of there, during the right time, and they were good enough to beat a champion that either was on the way out or, really wasn't that good, or they were kind of a part of a weaker division. Like, when you take a look at Joyous Ndango was there at the right time. And I know I'm going to get a lot of the Crawford fanboys saying, oh, you just hating on Crawford. I always get these emotional ass tangents about Crawford fans. Don't get it twisted. Crawford has proved his resume with wins over Postal, Gamboa, especially Canelo and Spence and Porter and Madrimov and some of those other guys. So Crawford, of course, has definitely massively improved his resume. And he has proven that he is a debatable top 10 level boxer of all time. Especially over the past, 20, 40 years, something like that. But even of all time, you could debate that he's top 10 level because of what he was able to do against Canelo, Spence, and of course, 3-time undisputed. He's a phenomenal fighter. But that still does not change the fact that the guy that he fought in Joyous Ndango, that he really was not that good. And the guy that fought, the guy that Joyous Ndango beat to become a champion, Edward Troyanowski, he pretty much was a fighter that really would have not been a champion of the past era. He pretty much was a champion because Danny Garcia had given up the belts, and that's pretty much the reason why he was a champion. And it's the same thing with Rolly Romero. It's the same thing with other guys like that. They're pretty much there at the right time, or they have good matchmaking, and that's pretty much why they're champions. So those are the weakest level of champions. But anyway, do I believe that Brian Norman Jr. is that weak of a champion? No. But I do believe that he's not quite as good overall as the upper echelon. So who am I talking about there? Overall, Duran Boots Ennis, Virgil Ortiz, certain guys like that. I don't think that he would beat either of them. And I don't think that it would be relatively close. But Devin Haney, we'll see.
I think you've been training your whole life.
I think Jake Paul could be a champion.
I don't know about that one.
I think Jake Paul could be a champion.
All right, now you pushing it, Jack.
If you moved right, you can be a champion.
It's possible. I'm not going to claim that Jake Paul would be a champion, but you never know. The problem is that Jake Paul would have to be a champion either at the cruiserweight division or, the light heavyweight division or something like that. And I'm not really quite sure if he could do that. I mean, that we already know that he's not going to become a champion at the light heavyweight division, not with those monsters that are there right now, because he can't beat any of those guys. But even at the cruiserweight division, I mean, who's he really going to be able to defeat there? Is he going to be able to defeat Jairo Pataya? Is he going to be able to defeat some of those other top guys? The answer is no. So, I mean, in order for Jake Paul to become a champion, I mean, the division would have to be literally so weak.
Move right, you can be champion. If you moved right, you could be champion. Top Rank has showed it over and over and over again.
I'll state this. If you move correctly, even a C-grade level fighter can be a champion. I'll put it that way.
Showed it with you. I studied the game. No, I studied. No, check yourself. Check yourself. Check yourself.
Do you think that your career has been carefully curated? He's suggesting Top Rank has kind of just groomed you on an easy path to this world championship.
No, actually, where I wanted you, Bill, I was supposed to lose. Enemy territory, enemy lines, young dude, everything against me, all of that.
Because they know you're a bum, that's why.
Because I'm a bum, but...
You can tell that Devin Haney is trying to get a little bit under his skin, but it is not working. It is what it is. This guy is, very calm, cool, and collective.
Once again, I overcame the odds, though.
That's why
I overcame the odds, though. And I came back 10 months off, stopped dude with a whole jab. Came back after that, knockout of the decade. Now for the knockout of the whole goddamn boxing history.
People we don't know.
And now they know you. And you finna be on that list.
They knew me.
You finna be on that list.
I've been at the top.
Congratulations.
I've been fighting the best fighters in the world. Time after time after time after time.
You finna be shot to the bottom.
You're gonna stay at the bottom.
You finna shot.
You're gonna stay at the bottom.
Boom! My prize picks lineup is like when you sell.
How difficult a fight do you think this is for you?
Oh, I believe it will be a challenge if I ain't gonna lie to you. No matter what, great fighter. Heads up to him. I know for a fact he worked hard. I know for a fact he got hard. He gonna come with everything he got, but in the end, it won't be enough.
You've won fights close, like the one against Lomachenko. You won in blowouts, like we saw against Regis Prograis. What do you think this fight looks like?
We got to see. I think that he has things that he does good, and I'm going in there to handicap him of it. And that's as simple as that.
Do you think he's going to have to chase you down? I mean, we have seen you fight different ways. You've moved, you've stood in the pocket like you did against Prograis more, Lomachenko. Do you think you're going to move?
Sure ain't finna sit in no pocket with me. I'll tell you that right now. Boy, you know good or well you ain't finna sit in no pocket with me.
I would mainly agree with that. And I think that Devin Haney more than likely knows that as well. Now, is there a chance overall that maybe Devin Haney, could stand a little bit more in the pocket if he uses his feet enough? It's possible. But if he just stays inside the pocket the whole entire time like he did against Ryan Garcia and stays there for way too long, he's not going to win that fight. Because Brian Norman is defensively sound enough in my personal view, and Devin Haney, just in my view, does not have enough dimensions in his game. Not saying that he doesn't have any dimensions in his game, but he does not have enough wrinkles in his game, and he is not defensively sound enough in order to beat that of a Brian Norman if this fight stays within that of the mid-range and up close range. I just don't see that happening, but we'll see.
Hey,
You violate, I'm gonna have to demonstrate.
hey, sit in that pocket with me. Sit in the pocket with me. Sit in the pocket with me, boy. I learned you something different. I ain't even talking about just the power, boy. That's that timing, boy. That's that speed. That's that IQ. I'm gonna catch you slipping on your pimping.
What if I put you down?
You can't.
I can't.
Boy, you ain't got nothing in them gloves.
Remember this day?
A lot of people, of course, were laughing at Devin Haney when he said, "What if I put you down?" But it's very entirely possible that Devin Haney can put Brian Norman down. He's been knocked down, I believe, once or twice in his career running straight into a right hand. And Devin Haney is someone that, he's not someone that has this prolific power, but he's someone that has enough power to possibly hurt you or overall, to knock you down if he absolutely has to. So, I mean, what I'll personally state is this, he does need to be a little bit careful because Devin Haney is someone that has a little bit more power than I think what some people let on. Now, is it top 10 level pound for pound power? No. But he does have, at least about B to B plus level power.
Remember this day?
I'm gonna remember every last piece of every day.
After the fight,
Debo Haney gonna get hit with a brick.
I'm about to be like,
You know what's in these gloves,
I
Sean?
told you.
You know what's in these gloves.
You violate, I'm gonna demonstrate.
Boy, stop trying to let flow, but you trying to
You
steal,
violate,
quotes
I'ma
and
demonstrate.
stuff.
You
trying to
violate, I'ma
steal quotes,
demonstrate.
brother.
You violate, I'ma demonstrate.
I want y'all to play them tapes back with Floyd saying everything this man saying. You trying to steal Floyd whole flow. Real quick, brother.
After the fight, play this clip.
And, a lot of people said that he got him with that. But I'll personally state is this. The Haneys, for whatever reason, and I'm not sure if they just don't like something out of Floyd. I'm not really quite sure. But it appears that the Haneys do have either, a bone to pick with Floyd or some sort of obsession with him because they've mentioned him way, way, way too much.
Look, he after the fight.
My whole thing up here to change how y'all over here playing, you feel me? So Floyd, he did his thing. I salute to him. He actually one of my favorite fighters. That was his game plan. That was his blueprint. You can't sit here and try to take everything that man did and just run it. That worked for him. Run your own play, brother. You know what I'm saying? So I'm finna sit here and do my
Get
thing.
off my dick.
Sit here
Get
and
off
knock
my.
every
You on my.
Devin Haney said, "Get off my dick." He said that because he knew that Brian Norman ended up getting in there. He had no other response.
So
You
hard.
on
You
Floyd.
really a fan. You
You
really a
on
fan. I'm not
Floyd,
on no
boy.
nigga.
Get your
You know,
own
listen,
stuff, man. Get your own
listen,
style.
I'm me.
Get your
I'm
own.
me.
Get your own
I'm-
look. You know what I'm saying?
I'm
You
me.
ain't got your own swag going
I'm
on,
me,
brother.
and I'm gonna show you.
So,
I'm gonna show you.
welcome to
Y'all
the,
remember this day?
Welcome to the new
Remember this
boxing
day?
era. Your boy Brian Norman Jr. finna show you how to do this thing. We see him be real professional in the ring and outside the ring. We finna respect each and every.
Even the cameraman helped out Brian Norman Jr. there by zooming in on him.
last opponent. We said,
About to close the show on Devin Haney. Look how they have Devin Haney zoomed out.
sit here, work hard, do our thing, and be about business. That's what grown men do. Not finna show y'all come November.
What are people going to be saying about Brian Norman after November 22nd?
That's a bad mother.
What are people going to be saying about Devin Haney after the 22nd?
He was supposed to do that. He was supposed to do that.
Get his ass knocked
We
out.
didn't know Brian Norman. He was supposed to do that. We knew he was going to do that.
November 22nd, welterweight title on the line, Devin Haney, Brian Norman Jr. Good luck to both of you.
But anyways, to end my final fight prediction here, this is once again going to be a very, very interesting fight to see. And to be honest with you, I've kind of went back and forth on this. Kind of before looking at fight footage, I think that I was easily going to go with Brian Norman Jr. because of his most recent performance, and I assumed that he was going to be much more slick of foot. But of course, recently doing a little bit more research, he is not someone that has that of the best feet. He's not someone that overall is exceptional defensively. That being stated, Devin Haney also is not exceptionally defensively either. But one thing that he does have is probably the better feet than that of Brian Norman Jr. And on top of that, he's much quicker of foot. And when you have someone like that, even if they're not, as defensively sound, or even if there's someone overall that, may not be quite as skilled, if the other person is not willing to fight within their range, then it's not really going to matter. Like for those of you, of course, that not only seen Terrence Bud Crawford versus Canelo Alvarez, two fighters that were already somewhat, at least heading into that fight, it appeared overall to be somewhat comparable in skill. But it was obvious that Terrence Bud Crawford's feet, that they definitely were a massive advantage, as well as his lead hand and his length. And that's also another thing that Brian Norman Jr. is going to have to watch out for here. Another fight, of course, a fight that I would actually probably compare this a little bit more to is that of a Joseph Parker versus that of an Andrew Ruiz. Because Andrew Ruiz is someone that in certain ranges I actually believe is more skilled than what Joseph Parker ever was. But the problem is that Parker was able to utilize his feet and his speed to the best of his advantage, and he was just able to eke out a decision in a fight that could have went either way. But it is what it is. So this fight is extremely hard to predict. I did see overall Brian Norman Jr., get that, of certain improvements in his last fight. Also, Devin Haney is moving up a weight class. So I'm not really 100% sure who is going to win this fight. Once again, it's going to depend on how assertive both fighters are and who really is going to be able to create their offense. Because the one time that I've seen Brian Norman Jr. against a super defensive fighter, in that of Quinton Randall, he pretty much was swinging at air. And a lot of the times he was doing certain stuff that really showed that of a bunch of desperation because he could not find the right way to get in. Now, I do think that he's going to find a better way to get in. So, we'll see what happens. But that being stated, I expect a better version of Devin Haney as well. I was at first going to go with Devin Haney, but I am very tentatively, because this fight is razor thin in my personal view, I am just going to go with that of Brian Norman. I do think that, overall certain adjustments will also be able to be made. And on top of that, I just don't know where Devin Haney is at this point in time in his career. And if he is as tentative as what he was in his last fight against Jose Ramirez, the size and the power of that of a Brian Norman, and also certain skill sets that he does have, if he does make certain adjustments, and if he is consistent in putting on the pressure, which I assume that he's at least going to try, I think that it just might be enough to get him the victory. Plus, I'm not quite sure how Devin Haney is going to handle this weight class, with this being probably the most lengthy fighter that he's ever fought. Which I believe that he even has a 1-inch reach advantage over Devin Haney. So this is an extremely hard fight to predict. I've kind of picked both Devin Haney and Brian Norman Jr. on multiple occasions. But for my final fight prediction, at least at the current moment, until something changes, I'm going to go with that of a Brian Norman Jr. Just because he is that of the guy that is more adjusted to welterweight. I assume that he is going to do certain things in order to mix up the action. But dude, you have to put on the pressure. You cannot rely on Devin Haney coming to you all the time and then trying to exchange, because you have to be someone to fight in that type of style. Even the best of the best fighters like Mayweather and Crawford, or guys like, Canelo or Usyk, or, so whoever you want to place there, Pacquiao, Leonard, Duran, whoever else you want to put there, even they overall cannot do that the whole entire time most of the times against someone that would be quote unquote A grade, or someone that is a very experienced fighter. Because what that means then is that basically you're relying the whole fight on not creating your own opportunities, but reacting to the opportunities that your opponents give you. And because your opponent is going to mix up his game a little bit, you're not always going to be able to land the same things, and you're not always going to be able to do the same things. So Brian Norman is going to have to somewhat effectively pressure that of a Devin Haney, and if he's not going to be able to, there's a possibility that Devin Haney could win this fight. So this is a fight overall that really could go either way. I could easily see it going either way. If Devin Haney is a little bit more assertive and uses his feet, and if Brian Norman does not make any adjustments whatsoever, and if he is not able to get inside the range and utilize that jab as well as keep his hands up consistently and push Devin Haney up against the ropes, I could see Devin Haney winning this fight. If Brian Norman Jr. makes certain adjustments and is able to keep Devin Haney at certain times up against the ropes and able to at least get offense off and keep Devin Haney's offense stagnant, then I would go with Brian Norman Jr. But we'll see. And of course, he does have a tremendous left hook. I've seen many videos overall, claiming that, well, he has a great left hook. Ryan Garcia has a great left hook. And that's great, but you can't basically predict the fight just off of one punch. It's great. And of course, Devin Haney does have a weakness to that. But I assume that Devin Haney will make certain adjustments and is expecting that punch to come at him. So we'll see. I expect a very tough fight. I expect a fight that, could go either way. I'm going to very, 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 very tentatively go with that of a Brian Norman, expecting that he makes adjustments and improvements from that of the Quentin Randall fight, because if he does not, he will lose this fight. But we'll see what ends up happening. But I expect a better fighter since it appears that he's very self-aware of what he needs to improve on. And on top of that, I don't know how Haney will handle the weight, nor at how good of a point he is. If this was the Devin Haney from the Regis Prograis fight, I would pick him to win the fight. But, just not at this current moment in time. But we'll see. Devin Haney has some proving to do. He has some proving to do that he can get back to his old form and be a top 10 level pound-for-pound fighter for sure at least. And Brian Norman, needs to prove that he's at least on that level in the first place. So we'll see. A true 50-50 level fight, but I'm going very tentatively with Brian Norman Jr., and we'll see if I'm correct. Anyways, the other fights, and if my fight prediction ends up changing, I will release my final fight prediction probably sometime on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday. So we'll see how that goes. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.